Hi, guys, and welcome back to the Heal to Heal podcast. Today's guest, you're just going to love her. Her name is Alicia Smith, and her story is one of survival, resilience, and choosing healing even when life took a very unexpected turn. While she was studying dance on scholarship at the University of Arizona, Alicia was caught in the crossfire of gang-related shooting. Crazy. She was struck by an AK-47 bullets, and she suffered life-threatening injuries, endured multiple surgeries, and she was given less than 1% chance of survival. But here she is. Why? She made a powerful decision. Instead of allowing this trauma and this setback to leave her stuck in bitterness, she chose to fight, to heal, and to grow. And today, she is an author, she's been on the TEDx stage, and she's an inspirational speaker who shares her journey. Why? To help other people overcome adversity, to help people accept their story, learn not to get stuck in the things that hold us back. So yes, she belongs on the Heal to Heal podcast. Alicia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm grateful to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to have you. Well, let's start at the beginning. I know this incident that happened to you, but can we just go kind of lead up to that, like where you were in your life at that time? Can we start there?
Yeah, I grew up in a loving household, Christian faith. My parents were and are incredible people, always did the best that they could. We didn't always have a lot, but we always had everything we needed. I grew up with 4 siblings. My youngest sister actually was adopted when I was 17. So I grew up in a very supportive, loving household. And I started dancing when I was 6, and I fell in love with it. And by the time I was 9, 10 years old, I decided that's what I wanted to do when I grew up.
Yeah, awesome.
I immediately started working towards that goal. You know, most kids don't make that decision at that age. But I did, and I continued to work towards that goal. And by the time I was around 10, I'd still say when I decided what college I wanted to go to. And
that's early. 10
yes,
years old.
very
Wow,
early.
that's impressive.
And that was the University of Arizona, which it's interesting because I just see how everything that happened in my life led up to this one moment where my life had just completely shattered. And I was living out my dreams, and I made it into the College of Dance at the University of Arizona, and really just loving every aspect of it, being there with students who had put their life on hold, right? Dancing was everything I did. My parents drove me an hour both ways out of town 5 days a week so I could study it, have a headlamp on in the car at night doing my homework. You know, I was very dedicated. And really, my whole family rallied around me with that.
Yeah.
So all of those.
It makes me think of people, like I've got a friend whose daughter does, ballet and those kind of things. It's the intensity of that. That's a really important part of this because so much of your life was embroiled in this. Now, how does that not become kind of who you are? So anyway, you're at this place and it's all working out at the moment, right?
It's all working out. And it was who I was. It was everything. It's all I knew. I was Alicia, the dancer. And then one night I was in the car. I was out with my friends and in a bad part. University of Arizona is in Tucson. I didn't know that I was in a bad part of town. I was in the car. We heard loud popping sounds. It sounded like fireworks. And I was shot through the liver with an AK-47. And my friend driving the car was able to rush me to the hospital. I was completely slumped over by the time I arrived. I couldn't.
Did it bust through the window and everything? Was anybody else hit? Like, what was that scene like?
So there were several rounds in the car, and talk about, by the grace of God, one of the bullets went through me and skidded the top of my friend's leg. And it was just a superficial wound. It actually skipped over skipped over my friend who was sitting right next to me and hit my other friend, skidded across her leg. And then there was several other bullets in the car, and one of the bullets ended in the back head of my friend driving the car.
That's crazy. And it could have gone through, but it didn't.
It didn't. And so he was able to drive and get me there as quickly as he could. When we got there, I remember the ER workers running out. I was kind of slumped over so they couldn't see me very much. I was still conscious, and I really attribute that to dance. It's so interesting because I the reason why I was where I was at that moment in time was because of choosing to dance. But at the same time, it's also the part of what saved my life, which was I was in really good shape. I was very, I was very disciplined. I remember just as soon as I was shot, focusing in and trying to breathe through it, which I'd done a million times through pain with dancing, and I really
Interesting.
think that's part of what saved my life.
That is fascinating, and I love the way that you frame that, like, even though, you're able to see that there was something there that was so horrible, but there was also something there that you needed to be able to get through it. So they got you in, and then what? Did they take you right into surgery?
Yeah, the guy who ran out to the car said, "Hey, hop out." And I just said, "I can't." And he couldn't see me. So he grabbed me under my arms. And I remember some of this, but I also remember my friends telling me, "We watched you as he dragged you out of the car, just a trail of blood following behind you, just out of a movie, just absolutely crazy." He threw me into the wheelchair, and I remember when he saw me, his face, I
Yeah.
knew it was really serious, and he took off running with me. He was yelling at people to get out of his way. They got me up onto the table. They quickly stabilized me, and from my understanding, as I've learned later on, that you're more likely to survive if you come in still conscious. And they quickly began to work on me. What's really sad is I there was already a police officer there who came over to me and started talking to me and asking me questions. And they were routine questions. That's what you had to do. Are you a part of a gang? Do you have any association? And I'm going, no, I'm from this little town in Colorado. I have nothing to do with any of this. And the car was literally caught in the crossfire. And I was one of 11 gunshot victims that came into that hospital that night.
That is crazy. That is so crazy. I've got a daughter who's a junior in college, and it just makes me think, from one moment to the next, you just don't know. 11. So, like,
Yes.
we're going to not focus on that, but did they catch the guys? I mean, do we at least have a good story about that?
Yeah, that is a no, they did not. They thought that
No.
they had the correct person in custody. He was only 17, a gang member, with an automatic AK-47. I would highly doubt he's still alive today, but that is another huge part of my story is that I never got justice on this earth, and that's another huge part of my healing process.
Yeah. Well, being able to let go of that. So let's definitely unpack that a little bit when we get to that spot. So here you are, they did surgery. And from what I understand, this was a long, drawn out process, right?
It was that first surgery. Well, first of all, I called one of my dance professors and she came in right away so she could get information and relay it to people because they weren't allowed to tell anybody what was going on, even my friends in the car with me. And the chaplain came in to be with me and he called my parents. So, yeah, as a parent now, I just,
Yeah. Imagine.
right. And getting a call in the middle of the night saying your daughter's been shot.
I can't.
Just so my parents, they somehow managed, this was in 2008. So this is before a time where you just quickly hop online, look something up, get a ticket. My grandfather happened to have a bunch of cash lying around and he gave that to my parents and they drove to the airport in the middle of the night. By the time I woke up from my first 5, 6 hour surgery, they were already by my side.
Wow. That's incredible.
But what was supposed to be maybe 1 week, which that sounds crazy in hindsight now, because they said the bullet had gone clean through me, but there could be complications because of the magnitude of the gun. And the doctor said, it's like dropping a rock into a pond, right? And it might drop straight down, but then it ripples out. And, these types of guns are meant to kill people.
Yeah.
And I ended up spending months in the hospital, sent back into life-saving emergency surgeries, one after another after another. I had about 13 surgeries while there. And then over the span of those next few years, I mean, I just had a surgery in last year in April, just about a year ago. That was my 17th surgery.
Yeah. So something like that, clearly, I mean, anybody that would go through even a tiniest magnitude of that, it's going to affect them. First of all, it really blows my mind that you remember that first part, because it seems like so many people, even if you were conscious, they usually don't know that. Like they
Right.
don't realize it. So that's impressive to me. So just for you to be sitting here now, the way that you are now, and to realize that you went through that, that's pretty remarkable. So take us through the, ups and downs. Like at first, it had to be very devastating. What was your thought process like?
Yeah.
How did that unfold?
I remembered pretty much everything, even while I was in the hospital. The first few months was just really about surviving.
Yeah.
It became very apparent right off the bat the emotional trauma that I had experienced when people couldn't even shut a door too loudly
Mm,
because I would have a physical response to that
yeah.
with anxiety. It's probably what most people can imagine. I not just physically completely deteriorated, right? In a split second, losing everything I knew. I got down to 90 pounds because I couldn't eat, and the the emotional trauma didn't really start to hit me until I recovered enough to go home. And I was scared to be out. Of course, everything scared me. Driving, being at home, being in too large of a crowd. My anxiety was crippling and debilitating where I couldn't function. And really continued down that path of just, I think my family let me have the time of woe is me, and I feel sorry for myself. And eventually I came to a place where my mom unknowingly, and of course this has stuck with me for a very, very long time. And just one day she just said, I love you. I do know that if you continue down this path you're on, you are going to become a bitter person. And, I don't want that for you. So right now it's your choice. Basically, you could choose to be bitter or better. And that is the catalyst that started me to go, okay, I have to do some real work here and I have to make a change. And I actually went back to college in Arizona, and I eventually finished school and graduated. I wasn't able to get a job doing that because my body wouldn't allow me to do that anymore. But that is the first step that I took in my healing, and kind of taking back my life and not letting this person who shot me and who did not care that he opened up fire into cars and a group of people, and not letting that try to control me so much.
Well, first of all, I applaud that so much. I actually wrote a book called Something to Forgive, and I didn't go through anything like what you went through. I went through an unwanted divorce and betrayal and some things like that. But I talk about that moment where you are at the crossroads of bitter or better, and you do have to choose. And see, what a lot of people don't realize is that when they think, I don't want to have to give up on my pain, they don't realize that forgiving or letting go is not about saying that that thing was okay
Right.
or trusting it.
Absolutely.
It's so different, right? It's a release of your own spirit from being, entangled with that and weighed
Mhm.
down with that. For somebody so young to have realized that and to have made that decision, it really speaks to something about your inner character and strength. And again, like you pointed out, when you go through a discipline like dancing, which is just, it's so intense, right? It's such an intense training process that you have to have a certain ability and mindset. Like, so tell us a little bit more about that, like unpack the kind of things you had to learn and how that maybe played into your ability to make the
Yeah.
right decision here.
Yeah. So a lot of it was my faith
Yeah.
and trusting that I know not everybody believes everything happens for a reason, but I'm a firm believer in that. Good, bad,
Yeah.
things happen for a reason, and then it is on me and my reaction, which is the only thing I can control, is
Yeah.
that I am going to choose what I do with this. And ultimately, that's where most of that came from. I think the physical aspects of things was wanting to dance again, moving my body again, and because I'd done that my whole life. And so I really fought to come back to some sort of semblance physically of who I was before. Now, I mean, I still have a lot of ongoing issues. You can imagine it blasted away part of my colon, hit my liver, all of that stuff. And as far as learning to start to move forward, it's a really cool story. So after I graduated college, right, I took that step. All my friends went off different directions, dancing jobs, traveling the world. And I moved back home with my mom and dad because I couldn't hold a job. I wasn't capable of doing that yet. I knew I couldn't be a dancer anymore, and I had no idea what path my life would take. One day in church, I heard our pastor talking about some of our volunteers who go into prisons. I happen to live in a town in Fremont County uh, that has 13 prisons.
Okay.
And I don't know, well, I do know what it was, and I feel like it was just God calling me for whatever reason. And I started prison ministry.
Wow.
And I started going in with kind of funny, just the change in my life. At that time I was 22, 23, and I'm hanging out with, 60 and 70-year-olds are those
Love
people
it.
I
Yeah.
was hanging out with at that time. And I started going into prisons and just sharing the gospel with these men. I one day decided to share my story. Pastor that I went in with, he just said, if you want to talk about it sometime, you can. These men would be very interested and touched to hear your story. And so I went in, and after several months of going in pretty consistently, I shared my story one day. And it was just in a small group setting that we were doing. We had broken out into groups, and I just remember when I told those men what had happened to me, their faces just
Yeah.
dropped. Yeah, all of them just were in complete shock. The part that really changed my life was I had one inmate come up to me and he said, I am in here for killing people. And I never got to say I'm sorry to that person. And so I wanted to say I'm sorry to you.
That gives me chills.
Yeah, it was just this incredible moment where I know not everybody gets that, the forgiveness, right, aspect of it. And it just freed me.
Yeah.
It just took all of those chains off of me where I was able to forgive. They didn't even have enough evidence to hold the kid they thought who shot me. He'll probably never be prosecuted. And I'm so grateful for that moment in time in my life. And that is really what started to change the trajectory of my life, going, this is not going to hold me back anymore. Because I was so angry and still
Yeah.
so bitter that someone had chosen to do this.
Yeah.
And it ruined, or I thought, right, that it had ruined my life. And that was a very specific moment in time where I forgave. And I love what you said earlier was that it doesn't mean that what happened to me is okay.
Yeah.
But that was just binding my life and holding me back, while this person may not have really even known that he did shoot me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love so many things about that and some things that we can unpack. But first and foremost, I believe that when we sow to the spirit, in other words, when I am good and when I'm kind, there is a sowing and reaping that happens. And even though it wasn't the person that did this that said they were sorry, it was so interesting the way that God used your story to impact that guy. So when he said that to you, he had a release. And that
Yes.
had to feel like a release to you. So it was doing
Yes.
both. And one thing that I've found myself, and I'm sure that you will agree, is that when I'm turn and share what I've been through with somebody else's, it's like your story can impact some people that mine could never touch. There are certain things about each person's story where,
Yeah.
like those guys that, they're seeing you, this beautiful young woman come in and they're listening. And then you tell a story like that, and all of a sudden they're like, whoa,
Yeah.
that's a whole different level. They're able to see immediately that here's somebody that made a decision to overcome. And now they're going to come and talk to somebody like me. I mean, that has to be inspiring. And that had to feel.
That moment, like I said, is something that I think God did put there, and it
Yeah.
freed him and it freed me. And it is what changed my life, and I think I would be a bitter person, and I would have never, and it's not about letting go of things, it's about releasing it to where it doesn't control every aspect of me
Yeah.
anymore,
Yeah.
and truly finding purpose in my life in that moment and where I was.
Yeah. It's easy for our identity to get tied to something that we're doing. And I
Yes.
know with me, it became my work and I was very deadline oriented and I would take on anything if it was an opportunity. And it got, I really think that some of the things that ended up happening in my life were God stripping those things away from me. Not that they weren't good things in themselves, but that they couldn't be the only thing. These things, when they do happen, what what can we see that God can help us understand through it, right? So what would you say that is there anything you would speak to about your identity now, about the
Yeah.
person that you are now?
Absolutely. So, right, everything in my life was dance. It clearly wasn't happening again. I'm still grateful I still teach dance. That's still been able to be a part of my life. But so many people experience situations, maybe not exactly to the T like I was, but that I am dance. I am this person.
Uh-huh.
And through this process, I've learned that I'm not just Alicia, the dancer. I had to
Yeah.
really let go of that identity and not work. Talk about healing. Healing
Yeah.
for me wasn't about going back to the person that I was.
Yeah.
Now,
That's well
I
said.
did that for a long, long time. I fought for that. And people also told me I could do that. And the reality was, these things happened for a reason. And I found the positive in things and I saw things from a different perspective. And the truth was is that I was going to be a new person because of this, a totally
Yeah,
new person.
because
It was like losing my life, but not dying.
yeah.
And I had to accept that I could be, that it was okay for me to be someone new, that that was okay. And ultimately, I think being a better person again because of it.
Yeah, I love that, and I think you can't I mean, you can't not be stronger if you overcome something like that,
Right.
because I think it takes a really strong person to be able to go then and now you talked in the prisons, but you didn't stop there. We'll talk about that in a second. You went on to get on one of the biggest, if not the biggest stage and write a book. So take us through that. So you were talking to these guys and what gave you the courage and everything to keep going like that?
Well, I think part of it was the way I was made. God,
Yeah,
I joke about that, but I was born, I think, with a strong personality and born as a go-getter. And so
yeah,
some of that was just engraved into my DNA. And just refused to let
I love that.
that situation control everything. Now, I will say, that it has shaped everything in my life. It absolutely has, but
Yeah,
it does not control everything. And looking back, I go, I met my husband because I came back here and have my kids because of that. And so I also just look at that and say things just worked out the way that they were
yeah.
supposed to. And I wouldn't have these beautiful things in life had I not been through what I'd been through.
I'm gonna stop you right there just to make a quick comment to our listeners. And, no matter what you're going through, what Alicia is speaking here is something to listen to let it sink in. Because here you see something that, somebody could have she could have just quit. She could have laid down. She could have said, I'm done. My life dream is over. She didn't. She took a different take. And because of that, God was able to work through her choices to bring her to a place where she could be so even thankful, thankful for her husband, for her children, for all these wonderful things. So remember that. Okay, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's great. So after I met my husband and I started to go, okay, I'm still alive for a reason.
Yeah,
I truly believe that. And I believe that not only is it my duty, but I want to come alongside and help other people and for them to not have to take 10 years to find out what I had to find out.
yeah, that's good.
And so I decided, I wanted to be a inspirational speaker. And well, and to begin with, it just kind of, I should say, it kind of fell into my lap. People would ask me to speak and I traveled the country and speaking all over the place, just sharing my story. And that's really was the catalyst
Yeah,
for, okay, this is something I'd like to be able to do.
yeah.
So I started speaking, and I eventually got to a place where I thought, I would really love to have a video or a document or whatever it was. When I saw people struggling with trauma and identity, to just go, here you go, right? Here's a nice and that's where the TEDx experience came in. And it really made me, because they only give you it depends on where you give your TEDx at, but you generally, when I was at, you couldn't go over 15 minutes. So I had to condense this, really hone in on what I wanted to share. And I was accepted at a TEDx in North Carolina, and I was able to present that and really wrap it up, package it up, and be very concise and clear about what I wish I would have heard
Yeah.
beginning stages of my healing process.
Yeah. Well, I've heard it and it's a powerful talk and it just really shares so many important things. And we will share for our listeners the link to that in the show notes, but as well as your book. So tell us a little bit about your book.
Yes, so I actually wrote that book when I was 23, and I sat down and I said, for me, it was a healing process. I had to get it all out. It was really important to me that it was detailed. I know now that that's not as important as it needs to be for a reader. So I will say that I'm also, this summer, I am going to be rewriting that. And I'm 38 now. And so there's a lot that has changed in my life.
Sure.
And I will let you know when that comes out and published again. But my book is called Thread, an interesting story with that title. When I arrived to the hospital, because of the type of shooting that it was gang related. For fear of my life, I was not allowed to go by Alicia while I was at the hospital. My maiden name was Brady. I wasn't allowed to go by Alicia Brady because if someone came in and they were looking for me, I mean, we know nobody was looking for me, but either way, that was the process that they did. So I had to go by an alias name the whole time at the hospital. And that alias was Thread. So anybody who came in to see me had to give that name.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That just gives it so many different layers.
Yeah.
Well, I love your story so much, and we're getting a little bit short on time, so we'll take just the last couple minutes to why don't you speak to somebody who has been through something traumatic or is really struggling with unforgiveness, or maybe just give them a couple of things to take with them, some advice that you can give them.
So I would, to anybody who's listening or struggling with identity or forgiveness, just remembering that your pain doesn't have to be wasted, no matter what that is. And that pain can always be a catalyst for growth. But that comes with hard work, and that is okay. And choosing, which is what I always speak on, choosing resilience, right? It's not a feeling. Forgiveness isn't usually a feeling, right? It is something that we are choosing every day in order to become the people that we were meant to be.
Yeah, that's so powerful. That echoes something that I've been talking about again and again, and that's going to be in a book that I've got coming out. But it is the power of decision. It is
Yeah.
a decision. You decide to believe, you decide to do whatever it is. You decide, I'm going with that. And until you make that decision, the rest of the stuff becomes so difficult because you end up being double-minded. You haven't really if you haven't really decided, you're not going to make it very far. So that is sage wisdom. That is sage advice. Alicia, thank you so much for your willingness to come on the show. Where is your website? How do we come find you?
Yes, you can find me. My website is just aliciasmithspeaks.com. You can find me on Instagram, the same handle, Alicia Smith Speaks. You can even email me, aliciasmithspeaks@gmail.com. Those are all the places. And you can look up my TEDx under Alicia Smith as well, a guide to finding resilience and joy.
Well, that is very powerful. And you heard it from having been given less than a 1% chance of survival. She didn't just survive, she is thriving and she is absolutely healed to heal. So until our next episode, remember that this is where you come to receive your healing and then carry that healing to the world. Heal to heal. God bless.